what are the objections posed by the accreditation body, and where do accreditation bodies fit in more broadly in the struggles that all of us face?
So, first of all, I did bring copies because that comes up. I did bring copies so you can, anybody who wants one, and let me give you one of these, has a list of the 14 things or thereabout that the accrediting body said were problems at City College of San Francisco and how far we've gotten in solving them. So that information is there. It's almost all financial and governance. We hadn't been tracking our SLOs, even though they came back, our student learning outcomes, even though when they came back this last year, they said the team was amazed at how well we've done with student learning outcomes. In terms of, in general, I think that one of the things that we've found is that California community colleges, the regional accrediting body that oversees us, the ACCJC, is unlike any other accrediting body. And I know that there are problems with accreditation around the country, but not like this as far as we can tell. It's a rogue agency. There's no, and it's very different. Their rate of sanction compared to any other accrediting body, most of them, the average, I think, is the average rate of sanction, any kind of sanction, is 6%, 5 to 6%. They're at 60%, right? So we're talking about folks who are just completely out of control. So it's a very different picture, and that's been one of the challenges nationally. There's now federal conversation about legislation through Jackie Spear, Nancy Pelosi, Anna Eshoo, who are all sort of in the Bay Area, but it hasn't. There has been a reluctance to really engage this because it's one, you're not supposed to have to legislate based on, personality or, one organization. And there's concern about where we'll end up if you open the whole accreditation can of worms. We've run into that everywhere we've gone in terms of the conversation. So it seems entirely different in terms of coming down. The way it's coming down to hit us is entirely different than what's happening in other places. But the themes are familiar.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Hank Reichman. I live in the Bay Area and I'm following this struggle very closely. And first of all, I want to thank you for standing up on this issue. It is far bigger than San Francisco. It's far bigger than community colleges. This is one of the major fights that we are engaged in as a profession overall, and I think people need to keep that in mind. I wanted to just make two comments about things. One is around the question of ACCJC as a rogue accrediting agency. I think that's true, of course. They are rogue in that sense, but they're rogue in the way Sarah Palin went rogue. That they are really sort of the camel's nose under the tent, so to speak. This is clearly, if they can pull this off, and their rogueness is not just random. It's about an agenda, and it's about agenda of turning community colleges into something other than what they are, other than what the voters and citizens of California want them to be. And so it's very important to recognize that, yeah, this is a rogue agency, but it's not irrelevant. And the other thing I wanted to say is around this question of what are the concerns of the accrediting agency, and Alisa has said, it's about finances, about governance, it's not really about educational quality. In some ways, she was understating this. It's about bullshit. I mean, I'm not kidding. One of the things they got these poor folks for is that they have no plan to revise their mission statement. There was actually a community college chancellor in the Bay Area who made a speech, and when he says, put it in front of some of these things. City College of San Francisco should be closed because they don't have a plan to upgrade their mission statement, revise their mission statement. Who would do that? And when this first happened, the San Francisco Chronicle, which has not been so great on their coverage of this, they had a story, but they did have a sidebar where they had all the different things that CCSF had been hit for, and I just happened to be the next day going to a party with a lot of people, none of whom were academics, most of whom were lawyers, in fact, and lots of them came up to me and said, "What the hell's going on at San Francisco, City College of San Francisco? I saw these things. What the heck does any of this have to do with education?" And if people outside of higher education can see that, this is something we can, make a case about. So I don't really have a question, I apologize. But I really just wanted to thank our colleagues from City College of San Francisco for really, not just for the fight they're waging on their own behalf, but the fight they're waging for all of us. Thank you.
So you told us a lot about organizing by the faculty and by the community, and I'm wondering about staff and about students and what role they've played, and in particular, whether or how the groups have worked together.
I'll talk a little bit about students. Certainly, what's her title? The student trustee is one of San Francisco's great heroes. Her name is Chanel Williams, and she has really done incredible work. And we've worked with a lot of student groups and work closely with the student organizations on this. So students have generally been pretty supportive. There has been other kind of staff issues with classified, and they kind of really went in somewhat of a different direction in terms of how they were going to deal with this accreditation issues. So beyond that, I'm letting you answer that. She's the union president.
Well, I would say two things. One is that, students have been hugely supportive, but they've also in many cases led the way. Our students have been amazing. It's very hard to organize at a college like City College of San Francisco, and yet they've done it, and we've been supporting them all the way. We're really excited that there's a new chapter of the Student Labor Action Project that's just formed, and so we hope to see more and do much more with that. And yes, Chanel Williams is definitely a hero of the struggle, absolutely. And we had 7 students with us in Washington, D.C., just in December when we went before the Board of Education and the Nisiki hearings, and they testified. And that's the thing, the students can tell the stories and fight. Anyway, we've learned so much from them in how they've approached this. And then just in terms of some of the other unions on campus and some of those pieces, as well as in some cases some community groups and some small groups of students, it's not all been easy, right? This is it's a complicated situation. It's not, in some ways it's as simple as the brother over there just said. It's like, what does this have to do with education? This is bullshit. And in other ways, there have been issues at City College of San Francisco, and they haven't all been dealt with in a timely manner. And so some people have gone very different routes, either because they really wanted one particular thing to be fixed, even if they couldn't see the forest for the trees, or because they were because of fear, and because they were so afraid, so very terribly afraid that we're going to lose this incredibly precious institution and all it does for San Francisco.
Marcia?
Hi, my question is, what are you doing for how many Chinese signed the Asian people signed the petition?
Well, there's a group called Chinese for Affirmative Action, and we've been working with them. And because there are 85,000 students currently at the school, or were 85,000 students in the school, they're coming up with a petition to try to get 85,000 signatures from San Franciscans and others as well, right, to kind of represent like 85,000
right, okay,
for the 85,000.
Not just
my
Chinese.
question.
Not just Chinese, yeah.
Oh, okay. And my question is anything being proposed to do for them? In other words, here you're having them help you, the San Francisco people at college and students who go there. Is there any kind of reciprocity for that group is giving you support? Are you prepared to do anything in reciprocity for them?
Well, actually, in this struggle, the reciprocity is sort of inherent in the process. Because in San Francisco, there are so many Asian immigrants who've come to the city who go to non-credit programs and who are able to, get some kind of chance in their life to make their lives better.
So are you highlighting that, or is that implicit? No,
yeah, it is. And so, like, for example, the people who, that's really interesting because, like, it's so City College of San Francisco is very embedded in the community itself. So what ends up happening is that people are coming who support it and see that it's their education that's being attacked. It's not like just the faculty is being attacked, it's like they're being attacked. So we are supporting them and they are supporting us, or working together on that. So like I'm saying, the reciprocity is like inherent in this sort of embeddedness of City College in the life of the city.
And is the city council being involved? I mean, is the government of San Francisco being involved?
That's
Some
four
of them.
questions, Marcia, no fair.
Yes, this is, yeah.
They're all good questions.
Yeah, they are.
How can we help?
That's a great question.
That's a great question. Well, so first of all, this is a good moment to just say the incredible resolution, or I guess I can't remember if it was a resolution or a letter that came from the Campaign for the Future of Higher Education last July, shortly after the disaccreditation notice was. That came from this group, was one of the first that we got and one of the strongest that we got, and it went up on our website and folks were just crazy about it. And I really want to thank CFHE.
Yeah.
Can't do the acronym.
Yeah, definitely.
So I want to thank folks in this room for that. That was huge. So at this point, I think we just realized Move City College Forward and CAA are taking signatures from outside San Francisco, aren't they?
Absolutely.
So we got to get you that link. That's a very small thing that folks could do. I think what we're beginning to turn our attention to now, and I hate to say it because we haven't sort of gone this route before, but the local is in pretty significant financial trouble. Because of, we're doing the kinds of things one should do in an emergency. We're spending down our reserves, which is one of the things, by the way, we were hit for at City College of San Francisco. Right? And so we are looking for financial help. And if folks have locals that they can go back to for $100, a couple of $100 as you go back to your local and discuss that, that would be really big for our local to help us continue the organizing work. Because we're not quite sure how we're going to sustain it. We're in the midst of a really big Coke campaign to try to help with some of that. But we're not going to be able to sustain this. And of course, our unit is shrinking even while we're working to try to save the college.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Well, my name's Joe Berry, and I can't tell you how proud I am of my union. I mean, I spent 15 years at City College San Francisco, and I just am. I mean, I'm like many people in this room, many contingents. I've had a very peripatetic work history. I've been a member of a number of unions, including a couple or three others that are represented in this room: City Colleges of Chicago, Roosevelt University, and others. But I'm incredibly proud of my union at City College San Francisco for having, come back from the dead when it was important to do it. Not the dead, but, suspended animation in many respects. Two questions, though, that I want to ask people to comment on. One is that why do you think this attack has been particularly focused on City College of San Francisco, and do you think it had to do with partly with the fact that especially the contract there was looked at as one of the best for contingent faculty in the country? That's number one. And anything else you want to say about why you think City College is targeted on this and why they haven't pulled the chain of ACCJC? Because they could have, either at the state or WASC or the national level at any time they wanted to, but they haven't. The second question is, you mentioned the Chinese for Affirmative Action and some of the student work, but even before that, the Save City College Coalition, which was the ones who put out this button that we've been passing on. No? Oh, that's AFT's button? Oh, they just adopted that.
We share.
Okay.
That's right.
But anyway, there is a
We're part of the coalition.
community-wide coalition that I think people need to say that out loud and urge people to look at their website, but they also have a petition going on, and I think it's still up. I don't know.
Yes,
So anyway, if you want to comment on that, that'd be good.
So why San Francisco City College? yes, if you had to ask me, you know, they don't let me in on their meetings, so I don't always know what they're exactly thinking. But I do think that, yes, from what we've seen, we see a very hostile to labor attitude in some emails that have come out that, you know, basically, some of them were incredible. One of the emails from one of the members of ACCJC basically said, if you let City College do what, you know, get away with this, the faculty unions will own you. Wrote this to the other CEOs. And so it's a really hostile labor attitude. And yes, I do think that they might notice that we do treat people a little bit better at City College than a lot of other colleges do in terms of part-time workers. Yes, I do think that that's a reason. Is that what they're saying directly? No, but they do connect it to financial issues. One of the things that they asked for, when the district asked for, was to cut back on the part-timers' pay more than cutting back on full-timers' pay. So they would like to change that sort of dynamic that's happened in the district, why we have more full-timers even. So I think that's part of the reason. I would say that. Yeah.
And it might just be worth saying, since Tim talked about how terrible the contract we just ratified is, it might be worth saying, we saved part-timer reemployment preference, we saved pro rata pay, we saved part-timers' health benefits. So,
We did.
you know, it's all relative, right? But everybody has suffered extreme pay cuts, that's the big thing. We saved class size, they were trying to do something so they could cancel a class regardless of the size, you know, even if the class was full, they could cancel it partway into the semester and various other things. So we actually, you know, we're kind of down on it, but a lot of people have pointed out, you know, particularly for contingent faculty, for our part-time faculty members, right, we really held the line, and we're proud of it. The things that we lost were things we can gain back, as opposed to things that will never, you know, certain things you lose and then there's no way to bargain back.
So in that sense, the contract, I think, was successful in that part, but yeah, we didn't try to mince it to people and tell them it was a great contract.
That's right.
They know it, and we know it too.
Yeah.
Helena Williams. You hear the phrase neoliberal agenda for higher education, and, you know, reducing public education to a transfer function, and employer verifiable credentials and things like that. Those, even though I think I know what those mean, I think of those words as more like code words that people in a group like this can say to each other, but don't have much meaning to the public and don't really have much on the ground meaning to me. But I'll bet that within this group, we could figure out what those words actually mean, and you could tell us what they mean in a really concrete, practical way at City College. And I think that's the kind of clarity that we really need to have in order to talk about this to the general public. So if you could tackle what the agenda is that made it seem necessary to start a war on the particular culture of San Francisco Community College, I would appreciate it.
Wow.
More austerity, I would say, that's kind of a word people maybe know, austerity, or less opportunity for students. I think that's really a key thing, people understand that. So maybe those would be a few words just off the top of my head. I would say, you know, less opportunity, more of a cookie cutter kind of education path for you, pathways, as you've heard, that kind of cookie cutter path. So those would be maybe a few phrases that kind of sound less jargonistic maybe, but I'm sure other folks have come
And they
up with really good
resonate
ones.
quite well, I think, yeah. Barbara?
Well, sorry, Barbara Bowen, thank you so much. I mean, it's so great to have you here because we read about the struggle, we talked about it in our meetings, but to have you really here talking about what it's like every day is fantastic. And I guess I have a version of the two previous questions, which is about the contradiction between having this rogue accrediting agency. I mean, who ever thought of their accrediting agencies as the tip of the spear? I mean, that, you know, and you say the average for turning down places is 6%, but this agency is 60%. I know you have this outlier person, Barbara Bono, is that her name? Right. So,
No relation.
no relation. Not all Barbaras are related. But anyway, I wanted to pursue a little bit the idea of why you feel, or why is it, in your view, that the accrediting agency is being, or is using itself, or positioning itself in this way, is being used in this way, given that accrediting agencies nationally have played a pretty low-key role in just ratifying what is there after putting us through a lot. But what do you see as the relation between the agenda of this agency and the larger forces that we talked about? Exactly, austerity, submitting us to the market, and also targeting opportunity for students who go to community colleges. I mean, I'm sure you've thought about why accrediting is the vehicle of this attack. And it's someplace that most of us, I think, did not expect an attack to come from. So why is that, and do you see inklings of that elsewhere?
I can, a little bit. You know, before you talked about like following the money, right? And I mean, I don't want to get too much into this now, because, but you know, the ACCJC has, you know, they've gotten money from ALEC before.
That's what I was gonna say.
They've gotten some, well, they got some from ALEC a long time ago for a conference. They also got grants from Lumina, quite a big grant from Lumina. And there was also another group in California called California Competes. And they got a big grant from Lumina as well, and they tried to, at the same time that this was happening, tried to go to court and basically sue and saying that AB 1725, which is sort of the structure of California community colleges laws, were illegal. So there's been kind of like a variety of these things happening, and it's hard to know always how these dots are connected or they're not connected. And I don't like to I don't like to engage in like conspiracy theories, this one and that one. But it did seem like a lot of accidents for a quiet neighborhood, kind of, you know. And so I do think that that's kind of part of what is happening. And I think that there's a sort of ideological framework that all these folks have about how they think the market should work and how it should work in schools. So and you see that in a lot of places. So that's kind of the best way I can answer it, I think.
It's right. It's in a way it's the central question, and it's also the hardest one to answer, because we've had a lot of speculation, and there's a lot of right. I mean, we are fairly well convinced that there are some real estate interests that are somewhere in the middle of this, not driving it, but some piece of it in San Francisco, because the real estate market in San Francisco is such. We're fairly well convinced that these, that some of the foundations and the think tanks are having some impact on this. There are a lot of possible sort of pathways, and in a lot of ways I think it's a perfect storm, because
For-profits.
and the for-profits as well, and there's sort of a perfect storm of things. One of the things I didn't mention, I pointed to the Student Success Task Force, but one of the things we found, and that's part of our lawsuit, we allege that they've done many illegal things, including put Barbara Bino's husband on the visiting team when they're supposed to be separate, right? Conflict of interest. But that there was extreme bias as they made the decision, and that bias really came from our advocacy leading up to this time around the Student Success Task Force and the legislation around it, which was looking to narrow access, the scarcity of resources. This is the whole state conversation in the community colleges. We can't be all things to all people. We're going to serve less students. We're going to serve the students who are going to get there. I think this will be familiar to people.
Yes.
And this was happening in the community colleges. We were very vocal. Our students were very vocal. We were out there. Our board was vocal. Our chancellor, right? We were
The whole institution.
unified, the whole institution. We were the primary opponents. And it turned out that the ACCJC was lobbying for this, right? Was lobbying for this same community college, deform legislation that we were lobbying against. And so there are a lot of, right, one of the things that I've said a lot during this process about specifically around those sorts of things, about narrowing the mission, around some of the Lumina stuff. Because the grant, $500,000 for these people, I mean, that's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money for this accrediting agency, actually. Probably had some influence, but not a lot of money for them. So I think part of the problem is that this stuff is in the water. They are not the primary drivers, I don't think, of these issues. It's in the water. Everybody's talking about it. The Obama administration is talking about it. The state chancellor is talking about it. So but they are on a mission. They are, there's definitely an agenda. Just one way to sort of think about this, one of our trustees, a new trustee we got elected who then quickly got deposed, met her sometime during that interim, met Barbara Bino at a conference, and she sort of laughed and shook her head, and she said something like, "Oh, City College of San Francisco, that's really just a struggle between good and evil." She wasn't right. She thought she was on the good side. Okay? So,
Lil, you want to ask your question?
Thank you.
Oh.
I got up at 4:30, I got.
And let me just say one thing, Lil, and then your name is Chris. And then maybe people, the West Coast people are dying, I can see it.
What I wanted to sort of connect up to what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. My question is actually about, you mentioned that there's a lawsuits and legal challenge going on. So given all the things that you just mentioned, especially with regards to the question that was just asked, is there anything going on legally to challenge the validity of the accrediting institution itself?
Yes.
And the reason I ask that is because this is something that's likely to repeat in many places around. So I just want to know what kind of legal fight back in a court can we expect to see that's something that just kind of challenges that? Because to me, somebody's got to be watching the watchers at some level. So I just wonder what kind of specific things under law can be pointed to say that this agency is actually not following some sort of valid procedure for evaluating the accreditation of the institution itself.
well, we certainly hope that the lawsuit will continue to prove that. We've moved a long way in clarifying that many of the things they've done have been illegal and unfair, and that the sanction on City College and the discreditation of City College is unfair, but not just that there are numerous places where they've done things. One other to mention is the fact that that the Department of Education actually found them in violation of several things based on our complaint. Right? All of this is in the timeline, but one of those things is that they were found not to have enough faculty. It's supposed to be a peer process. We talk about that all the time, but they've had some teams around the state. In our case, there were 1 or 2 faculty members on the team. Some teams have had no faculty on the team. They were found to be lying about who they claimed were faculty on the teams. So some things like that. I think that the lawsuit is a piece of that, but ultimately that's legislation, and I think it's both state and federal legislation, and that's being talked about very specifically at this point.
Thank you, Lil.
I guess the part of this that I find, the ins and outs of the ways in which goofy people try to screw us, we could all tell our stories, and there's more in the pipeline. But I think what's interesting about this discussion now, in light of the kind of stuff we're going to do the rest of the weekend, is, for me, the organizing stuff. And I guess what I'm thinking about as I'm listening to you and this wonderful metaphor of building the car while it's moving, I wonder if you had, because you were already pushing back against some of these same issues that we're pushing back, if you could rewrite history, what kinds of things do you think you would have tried to do to be there, be more there, to have your base in better condition? Because, in all honesty, I want to be open about this. This is what we're going to talk about.
Exactly.
Tomorrow we're going to talk about building base, because while these guys are building the car while they're moving, that's probably not the best way to do.
You don't recommend it?
I'm sure they wouldn't recommend it.
Don't try it at home.
Doing it in San Francisco is probably one of the few places you could do that, because I went to City College. City College is in our blood in San Francisco. It's just a part of everybody's life, and everybody believes in it. But what kinds of things do you think you might have wanted to have in place so that when you went into this, you would have been ready?
I would have liked to have a strong organizing committee that would meet and understand that the process of what they were doing was to keep organizing, and that when these challenges came down, we would have already had this sort of car, as we're building it, in place already. And so that would be the lesson I would hope that all of you would take from it as well. Like, you know, I don't know if it'll be accreditation, I hope not for you folks or whatever it is, but these attacks are out there, and the way to blunt them is to be organized. And so that's kind of the first thing I would do, and there's a whole variety of things that you can keep doing on that track. That's as simple as an answer I can really give.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
But I would sharpen that just a little bit, because I mean, I hear implicit in your question, Lil, that the sort of conversation about community. And I actually think, and I had a very strong labor leader come and sit me down and have a really long conversation with me about this. We were in shambles internally, even more than we were, I mean, we weren't ever in shambles externally, we were not organized internally with our members to make things happen. And so we were unprepared when the district completely changed. We had a new chancellor, we had a special trustee, the elected trustees who were still there at the time were afraid to do anything. So I think actually the pivot point for us, because of course we should be working with the community, and of course we should be doing that outreach and reaching out into that base. But it actually took, and I've never even told Tim this story, a very experienced labor leader really sitting me down and asking me questions and realizing, like, boy, what you're saying, you need to stop focusing on the community and focus internally and get organized within the community. And so the stories that Tim was telling were much more about the member organizing work that we've done. And so we've just now been able to turn back and start to look more concretely and large. You know, we kept some of that going, but more concretely at the community. We have amazing faculty, they're activist faculty, we've got a great number of people. It turns out they didn't want to talk to their colleagues, period, at all.
Never do.
Right? And this is probably not, familiar. So part of what happened was some real, internal, sort of hardship around, wait, the people we think about as our core people in this local are refusing to organize the local. They want to talk to the community, and we've got great community to talk to, but we actually have to get things together internally too. And people didn't really want to participate in that process. Those letters were blood, sweat, and tears. They were really simple letters, but we had to go out and find people and get them to sign them. So that, I think, is the thing that one of the big things that we learned, right? And so the sexy CTU stuff, which is so important, they didn't do that without doing the internal work. And right, folks in this room know that, but our members certainly didn't know that. And it's been a process of being convinced. And like Tim told that story about 6 times more likely to sign the letter. That was when people were like, oh shit, yeah. Right? So.
I would also just like to add that part of that process of getting the letters, sometimes people would say to me things like, well, what's this letter gonna do? They didn't really kind of make that connection. It's like, I'm here talking to you. You're talking to me. We are the union. This is the action. This is it. This is us together doing this. And we're all going out here doing this. And I'm asking you to go out and talk to more people. And that's how it's all gonna happen. And then they're like, oh yeah, right, it's not just the letter, is he gonna read it and like the letter or not? It's the process
so why
we're
isn't
going
the union doing this, and this?
Exactly. It's that service model rather than the organizing model. We're trying to change that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.